Hello, and welcome to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, where courageous women learn not only to heal from their spouse's betrayal, but to become the boldest, truest, most decisive, and confident versions of themselves ever. If you know there's more for you than the life you're currently living, but don't quite know how to get there, you are in the right place. Stick around to learn how to create a life that will knock your own socks off. Is it possible? It is, and I'm here to show you how. I'm your host, Andrea Giles. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Glad you're here today. I have a special guest today that I've been really excited to have on. Luke is a coach. He is in the same space as me. I'm going to let him introduce himself. He's in the infidelity space. He also has had personal experience with infidelity. He's going to tell you all about it today in this episode. And I'm hoping that it will help all of you. I, in particular, have men reach out to me quite a bit who wish that there was more help for men, because it happens for men too, not just women. And I'm just so thrilled that Luke is going to be in this space, because I know that he's going to be able to help a lot of men as I do most of my work with women. That said, I do have some male clients. Usually in one-on-one spaces. Love working with my men, but I'm happy to welcome Luke into the space. Let him tell you about himself, his experience, how you can work with him, all of those things. This is Luke Schillings. Luke is going to be sharing with us today his experience with infidelity, with being on the other end of betrayal, and kind of what his experience was with that. I've been so excited to introduce him to all of you. Luke is a coach, and he is in the infidelity space with me as well, and he is working with men. And I thought it would be useful and helpful to have Luke on to introduce him to all of you and to hear from his story. I'm sure that the things that he shares will resonate with all of you. So first of all, welcome. Welcome
Thank you
to the
much.
podcast. You're welcome. And first of all, just tell us where you're from, some interesting things about yourself, and then we'll get into more of the infidelity piece.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me on board.
Absolutely.
Allow me to speak to all your lovely listeners.
Yes.
Okay. So a little bit about me. I'm a 41-year-old divorced father of two. I spend much of my time running. As you've already mentioned, I'm a certified relationship and infidelity coach. So I also have been building my own business over the last year or so, helping men, pretty much the mirror version of yourself. And in terms of the type of clients that I work with, I'm based in the UK. And a little town called Lincoln, just not far from the East Coast. And I've been here all my life, always been in this sort of area. I've had a variety of jobs over my life. I've always probably defined myself as a bit of a jack of all trades. And it's interesting, prior to sort of getting into the role and the space I'm in now, I've always felt like I'm not really quite sure what I want to do with my life. And only in the last few years, that's really sort of fallen into the place. And now I can confidently say that this is what I'd like to do for the rest of my life. I spent about 15 years in hospitality and customer service background. I owned a pub restaurant and bed and breakfast for about 5 years, and then moved into manufacturing. Always been in sort of managerial roles, always been working, with teams of people, and I suppose in a way, coaching people, right from the word go.
Yep.
I married and I met my now ex-wife about 15 years ago. I don't think I ever really wanted to get married. And when I was young, my parents separated when I was a very young age. And bizarrely enough, it was my sort of first introduction to infidelity. That was the reason that their marriage broke down. And so I experienced it from a child's perspective, sort of going through. They maintained a very, very good co-parenting relationship and, still get on well now, but obviously been separate for all of that time. So I certainly saw it from that unusual perspective. I don't think I really realized the impact it would sort of have later on in life in terms of the experience it provided. And I suppose because I saw some of the pain that my mother went through, I think there was this fear around getting married, mainly because I had this fear of getting divorced. And I thought, well, if I don't get married, that solves that one,
Right.
Anyway, and then I met my wife to be, and very, very quickly I knew that something just changed, and I knew that I wanted to marry this woman. And, a little after, probably within a year of being of dating, we got engaged and we got married, bought a house, and then have had 2 children, currently 6 and 9. And we were married for about 7.5 years before the infidelity came into our story. And she'd started to I suppose, drift apart, but bizarrely, I don't think I'd really noticed. And this was quite a thing for me because I've always been quite good at reading people, or at least I considered myself very good at reading people. And so when this first started to happen and I did start to spot some things, there was this element of paranoia. It's like, well, how could I have missed this change? How did I miss this transition from being, happily married to this now place where there's disconnect that's building? And the affair partner was somebody that we both knew quite well. So that added an extra element into the mix and made things, a little bit difficult. So in a way, it felt like I was losing 2 people in some respects, both a friend and my wife. When it did come to the surface, I wasn't prepared to just walk away from the marriage. I really wanted to try and make things work. I didn't really know what that was going to look like. But in the end, after some back and forth, we decided that actually divorce was the only really option. She didn't want to reconcile. So that's what we did. We then got divorced relatively quickly. A real driving force was the kids, trying to minimize the impact on them.
Yep.
Because obviously they weren't, they were not responsible for anything that had happened. If there's one thing I can honestly say is that our role as parents, right from the word go, in terms of the way we worked as a team, was always very, very good. And, we complemented each other very well. And of course, that's continued since we got divorced. It was also quite a good focal point in terms of actually allowing me to move forward and help heal by just having that short-term distraction. We can talk more about that in a bit. We got divorced. I moved out. That was the best logistical thing for us to do. Just avoid disruption with the kids' schooling and a combination of other things. And I moved back to my parents, or back to my mum's house. And then, of course, not long after that, COVID happened, and it meant that, I wasn't really able to it wasn't the ideal time to be out looking for house buying and such like. So I ended up still being here, which is perfect because it means that the kids come and stay regularly, and, there's plenty of space here, and they get to come and see their gran and their auntie very regularly. And it's also offered a fantastic opportunity for me to make the change in my life that I have and really pursue this dream of coaching, entrepreneurship, and, ultimately helping all the people that I can, because I really can relate to the pain that we go through.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, telling us about your story. So tell me, in the early days, you found out and you were kind of hoping to work through it. What was the hardest part for you? Early on, what was the hardest part?
I think it was interesting when it first, I'd been suspicious for a while, probably about 6 months.
Okay.
I had actually confronted both of them separately at one stage. Not that I thought anything actually was going on specifically at that time, but just that I could just see patterns and things that were emerging that I didn't feel comfortable with. Anyway, I was convinced by both independently that nothing was going on. It was just a friendship, and that was it. So I took a step back. However, as time went by, I still started to get these feelings. There was certain behavioral changes. You tend, when you live with somebody, you tend to notice these tiny little details. The way that they are with their phone, maybe how they are when they come in the house and their routine, just minute little things, which is going to be unique to everybody. So it's not this is the thing to look out for, because I think everybody is going to have something slightly different. But when you know somebody, a human being as well as you do, and, and I trusted her more than I've trusted anybody ever, as much as you can possibly trust another human being, let's say. And so these things start to, flag up, and when it finally came out, honestly, my very, very first feeling, although relatively short-lived, was relief. And that was because I just realized that I wasn't going mad.
Yeah.
which is really how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I felt I'd not spoken to anybody about it. I kept it completely private and sort of dealt with it myself. And I mean, hindsight and all, whether that was the best approach or not is arguable, but that is what I did at the time. And then the period immediately after, it was like this decision period. And I was trying to just be as objective as I possibly could, which of course is very difficult when you are literally in it,
Right.
But I've always been quite calm, and even in quite extreme situations, I tend to be able to, control my emotions to a reasonable degree. We started straight away by just, again, keeping things away from the children. Initially, there was this back and forth of, are we going to make it work? Aren't we going to make it work? Are we going to make it work? Aren't we going to make it work? And I didn't really have any control over that. I sort of laid my cards on the table and then sort of basically put it in her hands. And I don't really feel that she was talking to people as much as she could have done either. So everything was closed and there was almost like nowhere to go. There was like no escape for either of us. So then the decision was made, and definitively, that we were going to separate. But it wasn't practical for me to move out straight away. So I still stayed living there for about a month. And we started to form a routine. So almost as though we weren't living together.
Yeah.
So I would look after the children for certain periods of time and take on certain responsibilities. She would do the same. So it allowed us both to go out and do things, as we could, and try and form that separation, not just for us, but also that it wasn't such a shock for the children when we did actually finally decide to, part ways, so to speak, physically. I think it was that lack of control. There was nothing I could do. And it was almost like it happened a second time, because the first was this whole build up and I couldn't control the affair. I couldn't control what was happening. And then once it had come out, there was then this next period of like almost decision time, which I couldn't control that either. And then obviously we did move out. I did move out, sorry. And the next bit I really remember, which was something I hadn't expected, but for the first few times that the kids came to stay with me, I found it very, very difficult. Like I'm almost uncomfortable saying it, but I actually resented them, because they were the reason that I couldn't just draw a line in the sand, turn and look the other way, delete all the photos, the Facebook profiles, disconnect and just escape. In a relationship where children aren't involved, that is an option. I mean, I'm not advocating that, but it is an option. And of course, it's the easiest option, just to go and, just not be reminded.
Yeah.
But of course, there was also this really sort of internal drive to really want to try and make it as good as we could for the kids. So over a bit of time, I really tried to divert my attention that way. But it did take quite a while to sort of really come to terms with that, because I was still seeing my ex-wife, or I mean, she was still my wife at that point, but I was still seeing her regularly, several times a week, because of the physical location. I would go around after work and do the sort of the bath, tea, bed routine, and she would sort of go out during that time often. So it was... Yeah, it was strange. There was no clear cut. I think that was the real challenge. That's probably what I found the hardest to begin with.
A couple of things that you said are, I think my listeners will really appreciate. One of them is the initial relief that you felt. And I appreciate your honesty around that, because, so many of us, like, we are tracking that there's something off and we know it, but it can totally feel like, am I losing my mind? Like, am I just making this up? And why might I be? Maybe I'm crazy, whatever. Right. And so I think that piece of just knowing, like, okay, yeah, I don't like it, but at least I know, like, I didn't make this up. It was real. And almost like, even though all these things are happening that are really hard and I don't love the answers, I think that there can be some relief in knowing I'm still with myself. Like, I was correct. I was tracking this correctly. And there can be a peace in that, right? A comfort in that.
Absolutely. There is, because you've just had the person who you thought you knew better than anybody else turn out to not be quite the person you thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course that says more in the moment, that says more, it feels like it's more about you than it is them. It's like you've misjudged it the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like, how did I get that wrong? How did I miss that? How did I not see that for all these years?
Mm-hmm.
So when you are then essentially validated by the fact that what you were suspecting was true, then it does offer that short-term feeling of, oh, thank God for that,
Yep. And I think with that, moving forward, as you know, for people who choose to stay, people who choose to go, they can really, really own that, like trusting that if there's something I need to know, I will know it. I will learn it. The truth will come forward, and really grounding in, I was right that time. I was correct. And I'll know again if there's something I need to know. Right?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's interesting to point out that you, generally speaking, and I appreciate this is like an umbrella statement, so to speak, but it's not unusual for women to be able to have these conversations amongst their friends and to be able to talk about their emotions and maybe explore it in a way that the average, and again, I'm generalizing. I know your guests can't see my hands waving around at the minute. There's the average guy is less comfortable doing that, certainly in any kind of group setting.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get this suspicion, this almost feeling of paranoia, I think a woman's standard word for this would probably be intuition. There's just that sense. Yep. And actually, I believe that men have exactly the same. It's just that we tend to refer to it as a gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a slight different terminology. Yet, of course, you still pick up on these things and you should still pay attention to them. They might not always be right, but they're definitely worth listening to.
Yep.
Without doubt.
Yep. Like, it's leading you somewhere. There's a reason for it to be there. Like, just pay attention.
Yeah. Yes.
The other thing that you said that I really appreciate your honesty around is the resentment that you felt that you couldn't have like this clean break. And of course, I guess I'm going to assume this, but like, we want to avoid things that hurt, right? And so if you're having this constant reminder by having to be around and, oh yeah, this is happening. Oh, that's right. Right. It makes sense that it would be easy to be like, if I didn't have these kids, then I wouldn't have to, right? It makes sense. I remember kind of feeling like, I just want to sit here and feel sorry for myself for a while. Like I just want to drown in my sorrows and give myself some time. And I just couldn't, right? Because I had to be a mom and take care of my kids, right?
Exactly.
So tell me how you kind of came to terms with that and where you moved into kind of an acceptance of what was for yourself.
Yeah. So I think the first thing I started doing was I did find a friend who was a very good help. He was just a real natural listener and didn't provide me with lots of advice or lots of how you should do this or any of that, which interestingly, a few years down the line, matches perfectly with my role as a coach.
Yep.
And that really helped because I could sort of really just process it at my own speed. Because one thing that I did notice amongst people in general, once it started to come out and more people started to find out, everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's got an idea of how you should act, how you should feel, what you should do next, what they would have done if they were you. And of course, I know we're all guilty of this. Of course, we look at all kinds of situations in life, and you'll see something happen, and you think, oh well, I know if I was ever in that situation, this is what I would do. Until you're in that situation, and then all of a sudden, you've got no idea what you're going to do. You don't really know how you're going to react at all, unless you've literally practiced that same thing repeatedly, or you've got master management of your mind. It's the average person doesn't know how they're going to be in a situation like that. So I found that very difficult, with the exception of this one person that was really, really helpful. And that I felt like I was always questioning myself. And it's like, well, should I be feeling this way? Should I be hating this much? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? Because one of the things that I didn't find that I did was I didn't hate my wife. I mean, I was extremely shocked, upset, disappointed. There are stronger words, but yeah, I think shock was probably the greatest thing above all. I really didn't like that choice that was made. And ultimately, that's what it was. It was a choice. But it didn't take away everything else. It didn't wipe the slate clean. There was still 10, 12 years worth of relationship that had come before that, which, from my memory, was pretty good.
Yep.
So just because one bad thing happened, as bad a thing as it appeared to be, and it really was at the time, I can assure you, I really felt it. It still didn't erase everything that had come before. So the reason I say that is everyone's expectation was almost like wipe the slate clean, walk away, do what you've got to do, get the finances sorted, draw a line in the sand, all of that kind of stuff. And actually, that wasn't really my driving desire. That's not really what I would. Yes, I wanted to sort out the things logistically. I wanted things to be clear between us. I didn't want any grey areas. I wanted to make sure everything was logistically sorted in that sense, but not for the sake of building a fence between us, not to put her on one side and me on the other side, because at the end of the day, in some way, shape or form, this woman is going to be in the rest of my life for the rest of my life.
Yep.
Because of the kids, and I'm not a parent that's going to, pack my bags, jump in the car, drive off down the road, never to be seen again. And I knew that she wasn't either. So this was definitely something that we were going to have to figure out. So there was a lot of that helped in a way. Then really my next process after that, I just started journaling, which is not something I'd ever done before.
Okay.
And I just started just writing stuff down. And then what I realized was that I could start to see the things that I could actually control, the things that I could actually influence versus the things that I couldn't, which was really helpful. It just sort of got things out, because I've noticed that when something's in your mind, you think you're processing it and it's there, but actually all it's really doing is just spinning around in circles, and the odd thought throws out here, there and everywhere. But it's actually not very clear, and it's actually not that easy to organize for the average person, at least. So getting it out where you can see it back, that really helped. And obviously discussing it with someone who can just listen and maybe just reflect the odd thing back to you, which is also really helpful. Then after this sort of getting this sort of reflection stage out, I'd obviously been on the internet and gone to Dr. Google to cure all things.
Yes.
Yes, he failed. But no, not entirely. And I started exploring. I stumbled across this mention of forgiveness multiple times. And again, it's something that I'd not really grasped before this. I'd always thought that forgiveness meant, letting the other person off the hook. Like, it was all about the other person. It was all about, well, they would somehow benefit. They would somehow be rewarded as a result of me saying, it's okay, I forgive you, And after a little bit of exploration, I realized that wasn't the case at all. It was actually so much more about what it did for me. Because by not forgiving her, by not forgiving the situation, I was the only person feeling like crap, to be honest, know, and I was the only one experiencing it. I couldn't separate myself from that at all. And it didn't matter. I think what I noticed is when I realized that it didn't matter whether I forgave her or not, it didn't change anything for her. Whereas when I forgave, if I chose to work on forgiving her or forgiving the situation, it did change things for me. Mm-hmm. So that was really the driving force behind that.
That's amazing. I think something I see in my clients sometimes is whether they're staying married or not staying married, this kind of holding on to the hurt and holding on to the pain as if it will somehow, as long as they need to remember, they need to know how much they hurt me, like it will somehow help them in some way. And when they really see what they're actually doing to themselves, like I am continuing this painful experience for myself. I'm continuing to create new pain every day by staying in this place. And so I think, yes, thank you for bringing that up. I think that we have a misconception about forgiveness, that as if it's just to mend a relationship, right? Like just to forgive and move on and forgive and forget. And it's just not about that, right? It's really what it does for you. And I think it's one of the most loving things we can give ourselves that nobody else can give us, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have to choose it. You have to choose it and really own it and feel the relief of it, right?
Yes. And I think with that, it's that once you realize that that's for yourself,
yes,
then you start to realize that everything else is for yourself as well. And so we play this part when we're in the relationship. It's like we're playing this role almost, and your goal is all about trying to do the thing that's best for your family, best for your kids, best for your wife or husband, in the respective relationships. And in doing that, you start to pay less attention to yourself. Yeah. And then this happens on both sides of the gender scale. And it's like for a man, for example, it might be a case of, well, I'm going out to work, I'm earning the money, and I'm doing all these things, and I'm doing the DIY around the house, and I'm sorting the financial tasks or whatever it may be. The wife may have some other role and equally they're all playing this part in this sort of like this game, this balance of trying to make everything work for the whole, which is, of course, that's a great goal, but not when it's at the expense of the individual. Yep. That doesn't help. Because if the individuals have got themselves lined up, got all their ducks in a row, so to speak, and you can really, come from a place of unconditional love, both for yourself and the people around you, then everybody benefits anyway.
Yep.
Once I realized that the best version of me was in fact the best version that I could possibly offer my children, then all of a sudden I'm actually a priority over my children. Which I remember to begin with sounded like a really odd thing to say. Well, no, obviously you put your children first, Luke. And it's like, well, actually, no, I'm going to put myself first because they will benefit.
Yep. Like it's in the highest service to them for you to put things in that order, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. A question I have for you is, what have you learned about yourself in this process? What do you know about yourself now that you did not know before the infidelity?
Okay, so first of all, it reconfirmed a few things that I already knew about myself. I wasn't overly reactive. I mean, I had moments, of course, but given that the affair partner literally lived across the road from us, I managed to not go around and smash his door down and and be arrested for assault or anything like that. I managed to keep myself restrained despite the urges.
Yes.
So I was able to, keep the children, do what I set out to do with the children, and be that role model and continue to be that role model. And I think, on reflection, I think some of that helped from what I'd seen within my own parents and how they'd tried to work things for us. So I think I always saw that, and that has been, reflected on me in some respects. Going further forward, I've been exposed to my own potential in a way that I hadn't seen before. I always thought that I could only do things within the confines of other things. So, for example, I'd always been employed, and every business I worked for, I always sort of naturally rose to the top. And I mean, they were never big businesses. They all tend to be family owned, quite small. And I was always this kind of person who could sort of take on a task that maybe wasn't necessarily my role. I'm not sure how welcome it was all the time, but always able to take on these extra responsibilities. But it was always within the confines of my role as an employee. And I never really saw myself outside of that. And so, of course, coming forward, both in my entrepreneurial experience in the last couple of years, obviously I've seen ways in which I can grow in all kinds of directions in a business sense, but also in a personal sense. I've been able to explore parts of me that I'm not sure I even knew existed, ways that I see the world, the way I see people, what I really want from my life in terms of not just chasing that next short-term goal, not chasing the next promotion, not chasing just waiting for the next thing. I'm definitely guilty in the past of saying things like, oh, well, it'll be okay when the kids are this age. It'll be okay, the kids when they're that age.
Yes.
And of course, these ages come and, and it's just a new set of problems.
Yep. Right. Yep.
It's almost like, oh, well, it'll be better then. It'll be better then. It'll be better then. And it's actually, no, it's at its best right now. Right at this very moment. I'm doing the thing that I can't think of anything better that I would rather be doing right now than talking to you about this.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Such an amazing perspective. And I do think that sometimes it takes, really having to stare down our life in a way that we never have before to really see the parts of us that have always been there and we just didn't know it. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us, how's life for you now?
Yeah. So, all things considered, life's okay. In fact, it's probably better than okay. I was able to work through my process of the infidelity and to really sort of come to terms with that. There was another challenging factor which came into play, which we hadn't discussed, and that was the role in which the affair partner played after I moved out. Because of the sort of slightly increased interaction with the children and things like that. And I found that very, very difficult to come to terms with.
Okay.
Again, I sort of managed it as best I could. And in the end, that relationship did come to an end. But even during that year that lasted, it was still, I had plenty of things to sort of focus on of how to get over this next bit. So there was a long succession of new challenges, new things to try and overcome an obstacle, which is just, when you do that repeatedly and you intentionally try and get over them, it just builds up that resilience. And you just get better at it. And you start to have confidence in your ability before you've even done something. It's like, okay, this next thing that's coming is hard, but I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yep.
And then, so interestingly enough, about after they separated, another year or two went by. And actually now me and my ex-wife are dating. It's still in the relatively early stages. We are obviously wanting to protect the children in the same way that we always have done, because it was difficult for them as well. I know we haven't really spoken about that too much, but it was challenging for the kids. And so it's, all things considered, it's
amazing.
It's done a full circle, and it's ended me up doing. I've now ended up doing what I'm doing as a result as well. It's strange how I'd never have imagined that. Right. I've just launched my own podcast, and all these things that are just happening, all because of this choice that was made, a few years ago. I can't complain, if I'm honest.
Amazing.
So there's hope. There is hope.
Yep. Amazing. And my guess is that in this new beginning stages of dating again, my guess is that you're both in quite different places than you were
very different
first time around. Probably know more than you did about yourselves, about what you want.
It's completely different. And it's almost like dating somebody else, but with the comfort of being somebody that you already know.
That's so amazing. I love that. Well, okay, so this is going by way too fast, but we'll wrap it up here in a bit. But I have one more question for you.
Yeah, of course.
Actually, two more. Okay. Number one is, what are you most proud of within yourself? What are you most proud of?
I think I touched on it before, and that's probably the resilience. I mean, it's easy to say something like, well, I'm most proud of my kids and I'm most proud of these particular achievements and I'm most proud of things. But of course, they're all ongoing, fluid, dynamic things. And whereas the things that are with you, they tend to be more constant. So I'm proud of how I've dealt with the whole situation. It was extremely difficult. And I've seen people take very, very different paths from very, very similar set of circumstances. And I can only, surmise that it's just been the choices that have been made down those paths. And of course, don't get me wrong, my ex-wife played a part in this as well. Of course, didn't have an aggressive, abusive type relationship. It was, but Yeah, I think just that it's just given me a confidence and a new look on life that I didn't think I would get at this point in my life. Ultimately, I know that it's the choices that I've made that's got me here. Yep. So I think I'm most proud of that.
It's pretty powerful, right? When we have things happen that are just out of our control, things that happen, but we always have a choice of how we respond. And to know that you can hold your head up high and be proud of who you've become through this and the traits that were already there that have been strengthened that you can really see. That's pretty amazing, right? Okay, so the last thing before we go, I want you to tell everybody how they can find you, how they can work with you, learn from you. And I also want to just have you say something in closing to my listeners. If you could give them any advice, what would it be?
Okay. So in terms of working with me or just finding out more, I'm easily accessible at my website is lifecoachluke.com.
I love it. Okay.
Nice and easy.
Yep.
My Facebook and Instagram accounts are at my Life Coach Luke, MY Life Coach Luke, all one word. I have, as I mentioned before, my first 2 podcast episodes launched at the beginning of this week.
So exciting.
That is under and the podcast is called After the Affair with Luke Schillings.
Love it.
Yeah. So that's the main sort of ways that you can reach out and contact.
Perfect.
In terms of passing words, if you like, to your listeners, is probably the most impactful thing, not only for me, but it's also the thing that I start with when I work with clients and anybody that's been through this situation, is start by just really getting clear on the things that you can control versus the things that you can't control. And even if there's a list of those things that you can't control, and that list is longer than you want it to be, and it's difficult to look at and it's difficult to come to terms with, when you realize that you can't control them and there's nothing you can do about it, all of the emotional pain that you feel trying to deal with that is just wasted energy. And if you can just get that so you can see it and then start to divert that energy towards the things that you can control, you will start to see changes, not just around your infidelity, but around your whole life.
Yep. Oh, that's amazing, amazing, amazing counsel, advice. Thank you so much. All right, Luke. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure. I'm so excited for you and for all the people who are going to learn from you. I'm so glad to have you in this space. Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast. If you would like to be kept in the know about upcoming free classes, new podcast episodes, and other ways of working with me, go subscribe to my weekly email. You can subscribe at AndreaGiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. Again, it's AndreaGiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. I will see you next time.